All right. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about the media and its role in politics. So, the more power the media have, the more concern there is about who is providing political news and whether or not they are fair and unbiased. Okay, so we talked about the media's role in agenda setting. So, where the media kind of gets to select which issues and stories become part of that public perception, what people are talking about. The issues that the media covers more frequently and prominently are seen to be more significant. So, as we have already said, one of the most important developments of the internet age has been the rise of social media outlets like Facebook and Twitter, because social media is going to allow communication in both directions between politicians as well as citizens. They're able to have that direct link to each other. And it's also going to provide a platform for citizen journalism. So, allowing individuals to create and share content as well as comment and forward to other members. Okay, so it's been a big part, social media has, of our 21st century democracy. All right, so the reshaping of what is news. So, the pressure to add an audience in a marketplace with many alternatives has led to infotainment, which is the merging of information and entertainment to attract viewers. Okay, so during this time, media outlets are very profit driven. Okay, so they want more readerships, they want more viewership, because that's going to determine advertising revenue, which can sometimes drive the content that news sources or media sources are going to provide. So there's been this increasing competition, okay, there's this need to try to attract audiences. So rather than creating broader exposure to a variety of news sources, consumers are going to tend to choose content that appeals to their worldviews. And that's where we get this idea of echo chambers, okay, or finding news sources that are essentially saying what you want them to say, in a sense, okay, who are expressing your views, okay. And social media has kind of exacerbated that phenomenon, okay. So this includes the pressure to provide soft news or stories that focus on celebrities, personalities, and events rather than stories of political or economic significance. Okay, so you have broadcast stations that are trying to reach particular audiences to gain viewership, but they're also providing news stories that people might be more entertained by. So things on celebrities or events rather than politics. So that's where you get the difference between hard news topics and soft news topics. All right, next we're going to talk a little bit about bias, okay? So some people will claim that American news media has partisan bias or the slanting of political news coverage in support of a political party or ideology. Those who point it out has a liberal bias, point out that journalists are more likely to identify as liberal. So there's this perception that the media are politically biased, okay, and that stories are going to be biased as well. Okay, so this bias that we're talking about is this ideological tendency to view and present information from a particular point of view. Okay, some might see it as being more of a subtle bias, where some might see it as being extremely biased. Okay, so again, what we're saying here is that many people are going to argue that journalists are liberal, okay, and therefore the news is presented in a more biased way. So you can see here, All Sides is a website that we are going to look at in class, but it kind of breaks down how different news sources, okay, where they fall on the political spectrum. So in the center, you have the AP, and then as you get further right or further left, you can see what other news sources would kind of fall under as far as leaning more liberally or more toward the Republican side of things. So concerns about biased media have been accompanied by a lack of trust in news sources. Confidence in sources has dropped, especially in TV news. Okay. One potential source of the problem is the audience. Again, news outlets are going to pursue inflammatory and sensational coverage to secure their corner of the marketplace. Okay, so again, this is a business, okay? So they are trying to attract an audience, which is going to drive advertising. So stories about government and regulation and policy are often going to be seen as boring and won't attract a large audience, okay? So this is where you're going to get some of those more sensationalized stories. So let's talk about medias and campaigns. So the drive to attract an audience can shape how media outlets cover campaigns and elections, as well as how candidates are going to try to present themselves. So when covering campaigns, the media might focus on polls and emphasize who is winning rather than the policy differences between candidates, okay? This is called horse race journalism. So horse race journalism is essentially when media are just reporting on polls and who is more ahead, okay? So kind of tracking poll results in terms of preferences in upcoming elections, okay, rather than focusing on the issues, okay, that the candidates are presenting themselves on. So horse race journalism, focusing on who's winning instead of the issues. So politicians and their staff are going to try to get their message out and really shape how viewers react to it. So, a digital divide. New technologies can divide Americans and make them more partisan. Some people may follow the news more closely, but others may avoid it entirely because of other entertainment options. Okay, so the internet has widened the gap in news exposure and political knowledge. So this goes back to a couple of the things we've already touched on. News sources are trying to attract viewers, okay, so they might actually have more of a bias or lean one way more politically to try to attract that group of viewers. You also have social media and citizen journalism, okay, where they might not have that journalism background, okay, so it's just people posting information. And then again, some people are going to have other entertainment options and might not take in any kind of news. So Americans who can navigate multiple media options may benefit with access to information, but those who can't may fall behind. All right, and now let's stop with a credibility divide. So this is going to be our last slide. It can be really difficult to sort credible sources from those that are researched, inaccurate, biased, or satirical. So as Americans, it's our job to view media critically and stay informed because, again, media is one of those linkage institutions between the government and citizens. So this brings up the idea of fake news, okay? So fake news is generally understood as some type of propaganda that's intended to spread false information or discount actual journalism. And sometimes fake news is really difficult for anyone to detect. For example, YouTube videos that appear to be from, legitimate news sources have been edited to be misleading. Okay, so it can be hard to distinguish what is reliable news sources and unbiased news sources from those that are unreliable or are biased. Okay, and that can kind of lead to this mistrust in the news media. So, what is fake news? Okay, illegitimate news can promote negative attitudes towards media and the government. So, again, it's really important as Americans to view the media critically and to stay informed. All right, and that's where we're going to stop.